It's time for another episode of Let's Talk Business, featuring interviews with South Carolina business executives, community leaders, and government dignitaries. Let's Talk Business is a truly one-of-a-kind business-to-business talk show. And now, here's your host, longtime South Carolina business publisher, Rick Jenkins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I'm your host, Rick Jenkins, and I appreciate you joining us today. We've got a nice show. We're going to be talking to three executives today. Let me tell you who they are. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with our first guest. We're going to be talking with Brittany Sinde. Brittany is an associate creative director at Fuel. Fuel is a fuel service marketing agency that is headquartered right here in Greenville. I look forward to talking to Brittany for a number of reasons, but one of which I've got to find out what happened when she graduated Bob Jones University and went to Dubai for a few years before returning to Greenville to work at Fuel. That's got to be a good story. She lived in Dubai for a few years, had some cool jobs. Look forward to talking to her. I'm also going to be talking with Travis Seward. Travis is the Chief of Staff at EVG Media, and Travis joins us once every couple months or so. He is our marketing mastermind, as I like to say, and he is going to be talking to us about content solutions and a variety of things, including earned media, what that is, and how you should take advantage of it. And then our featured guest today is Dave Edwards. Dave is the president and CEO at Greenville Spartanburg International Airport. Officially, I guess he runs the Greenville Spartanburg Airport District. Dave is a really smart dude, very knowledgeable. He's been in this business his entire life. And get this, it wasn't too long ago that the airport was actually named the best small airport in North America. And Dave and his team, of course, had everything to do with that. So look forward to talking to Dave and Brittany and Travis. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back here in a minute. But first, we're going to take a quick 60-second break to get a pro tip. A pro tip is 60-second snippet of advice from our financial wealth manager, and that is Jeff Froman. Jeff is a certified financial advisor for Ameriprise Financial Services. He joins us from time to time. Let's hear what Jeff has to say. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey, Rick. Jeff Froman with Ameriprise Financial coming to you from Lucca, Italy. The financial tip of the week this week is on saving money while traveling. Tip number one, be sure to book your travel on the airlines on midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You'll save between 5 and 25% versus booking Friday through Monday. Now, tip number two, when you're renting a car, be sure to check the credit card you're using and find out if it will give you the automobile insurance you need rather than paying for it from the rental agency. And tip number three, the big one, use Airbnb, Vervo, or Booking.com to rent an apartment versus staying in a hotel. It can save you a lot of money. Of course, you have to maybe do your own cooking and things like that, but it's an adventure. So those are your financial tips of the week. Jeff Froman, Ameriprise Financial.
Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I'm your host, Rick Jenkins, and I appreciate you joining us today. And we're ready for our first guest. And our first guest today is Brittany Sinde. Brittany is the Associate Creative Director at Fuel. Fuel is a full service marketing agency that is headquartered right here in Greenville, doing business a little bit of everywhere. Fuel specializes in creating brand building strategies to help your brand stand out from the crowd. And as I told you when we started in the opening, Brittany went off to Dubai and hung out there for a while before she came back to join us in Greenville. And now let's find out what all that's about. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It is good to see you. I can't wait to hear about a lot of stuff that's going on with Fuel. But we got to start with Dubai. Okay. So you graduated from Bob Jones University when?
In 2009.
2009. And then you just said, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to Dubai. And you hung out in Dubai for 8 or 9 years before coming back. Now, Dubai is in United Arab Emirates.
Correct.
Right? That's the name of the country. And Dubai is the big city. Why did you go to Dubai?
It was a bit of a fluke, honestly. I graduated right after the recession hit, so I knew that I needed to come up with some other options besides actually looking for a full-time job, and I'd always wanted to travel, so I lived in Russia and Israel, and then Dubai was the third place. It was really just a random connection, someone who offered me a job, and I just was open, and I went, and then I started my career in advertising there.
Got it. So you didn't go over there to take an advertising job. You just went over there and you fell into this.
Yeah.
You loved it. You came back and you're still doing it.
Yeah, well, I studied creative writing and psychology, and I never had any idea what I would do with that, apart from I knew that it was going to work out, and advertising seemed to be the perfect option.
How about that? Now, Dubai is one of the most wealthiest cities in the world. Mm-hmm. You could probably make an argument that it is the wealthiest city in the world. And it is also extremely hot. Before I came on the air, I just happened to look at this. The high temperature today in Dubai is 106 degrees. Yeah. The low is 92. It's hot.
Yeah, but 106 is pretty low, too, for Dubai.
Really?
So, yeah. I would say like 125.
Oh, my goodness. Are you serious?
More, yeah.
Does 120, what does it feel like? It's not humid, though, right?
It's super humid. It's on the sea. So,
how do you even breathe?
Yeah. Well, you don't spend a lot of time outside. It's more taxi straight into the building, and then building straight into the taxi. And then, yeah. Okay.
Well, I could sit here and we could spend the entire time talking about Brittany and Dubai, but let's not do that. Let's talk some business.
Sure.
Okay, so Fuel, you all say that you are not an ad agency. You are not a marketing agency. You describe yourself as a brand building agency. What does that mean?
Correct. Well, I do want to make it clear that we're not saying that we don't do advertising or marketing, but brand building is basically a brand first approach to strategy and to marketing. So it's incredibly important for us to be able to deliver on our own brand promise, which is to be able to stand out in loud and crowded markets. And we feel the best way to be able to do that is through a strong differentiated brand and through a mix of marketing tactics that evolve over time. So similar to the name brand building, it's definitely a big picture, long-term approach to building on something that you've created with a really strong foundation and you've evolved it over time based on consumer needs.
Right. So someone comes in and they want, I can imagine they're coming in, I want to do this, I want to do this. It's probably a little bit of hang on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
You mean like marketing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out before we figure that out.
Correct. I think like anytime a client comes to us and they're looking to have very promotional, very tactical approaches to their brand, we sort of second guess that because we think like if you're trying to build loyalty, obviously the way to be able to do that is to have a really strong recognized brand first, something that people can trust. And when they see a logo, they attach some type of meaning to that. And it's not just a transactional experience for them where you're constantly just adjusting price to be able to get their choice.
Yeah.
So in some way, I think we build brands that people choose.
Yeah, I can understand that. So a client comes to you, does this process take them back a little bit?
Depends. Sometimes we have brand new clients with brand new brands, and then other times we have long established brands coming to us. I think we just want to know that you can answer questions across your team being completely aligned. So do you have a very strong foundation in terms of what your mission, your vision, your goals are, and your values as well? Do you know what your brand really represents and provides and promises to the consumer? And if you can answer all of those questions, and then you also have, market and consumer research to back things up and for us to have a way forward, we're not going to make you start at step one. But a lot of people who come to us are starting there. So it's important that we know how to support them as well.
What do you do when someone walks in the door, they're already at step 6 in their mind, and they're not going where you think they need to go?
Yeah, I think we definitely have to be aligned in terms of the process. We have a model that we call the brand blaze, which is basically the first step in our process for creating.
Brand blaze?
Yeah, the brand blaze.
BLAZE.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay. We're Fuel, so the logo is a flame. And the brand blaze is this product that we've created out of our strategy, which takes you through 5 core stages of brand building. So that we can make sure that you're aligned across the brand essence, which is those really foundational core tenets of what your brand represents and what it promises, into market, audience, your primary challenge, and then ultimately your storytelling strategy as well.
Storytelling strategy. Tell me a little about that.
Well, I
would assume that you have to sit down and you have to have a long conversation and do some work, and drag out of them what they're trying to do and...
Right. Yeah. It's the last stage of our brand blaze. That's basically us all aligning on what exactly it is that you can say and promise your consumer, and then building a messaging strategy around that. And again, those messages are all going to be rooted in the insights that we've uncovered in the previous stages. So it's really important that is the last step that we take together before moving into brand identity.
You had said something before we came on the air about looking for brands to partner with. Explain what that means.
Well, I think it really just comes down to us being aligned and knowing that we can provide value and that we have sort of the same goals. We really want to create those strong differentiated brands, or at least revamp existing brands to sort of evolve with the market and with the consumers. And if a client feels like, no, I'm not interested in all of that early strategy, or I'm interested in going through an entire rebrand or whatever, even little tweaks, etc., and just getting straight into the marketing, it's not going to be a great fit for us because we can't market a brand that hasn't taken care of all of those core issues first.
I got you. So when you talk about partnering, you're just talking about let's work extremely close together each step along the way, collaboratively.
Yes.
That's the partnership that you're referring to.
Collaboratively, correct? And long term, for sure. Because we can't create magic, I think, like overnight. Yeah. There's this ideal scenario where we are partners for the foreseeable future and not just used as like, a partner for a couple of months and then the relationship ends. Because again, then going into the marketing phase, which is very iterative, full of a mix of tactics, et cetera, we need to be able to measure the progress and the growth of the brand over time. And the only way to do that is like if you allow us to continue the work that we've already started.
Right. Are most of your clients set up in that partner type fashion, or do you have some that just come to you for, well, of course you're going to have some that come to you just for certain things, specific things. Mm-hmm. They come and go their own way, but most of your valued clients are partners in that sense. Correct.
I mean, you can't necessarily turn people away when you feel that there are ways that you can help them even short term. That's just not that's not our ideal scenario.
Right. But if that's what they want to do.
Right. I think it's just aligning on expectations.
Right.
We're saying we can do a better job with this setup, but if you can't necessarily invest in that at this point in our stage, then we're able to sort of be flexible, let's say.
You said you had a vision for businesses and partnerships and what that looks like over a period of time.
Yeah, for sure. I think just those initial goals and the mission and the vision and the values that we create earlier in the stage of the brand, we want to make sure that we're achieving those over time and always using those as sort of the North Stars of how we can measure our success or not. And I do think within the greater scheme of Greenville, I think we would love to see brands giving more back to their communities, investing more in their employees, and just making business a bit more people-centric overall.
So that is, let's back up a second. I'm going to circle back to what you just said there. Fuel is now owned by, what's her name?
Mary Church Cornett.
Yes. Mary bought Fuel how long ago?
Last November.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to me like when I hear you talking, it sounds like Mary has a vision.
Yeah, she does.
That Mary has a vision
yes.
of what these partnerships look like to her.
For sure.
And she has passed that vision on down, and that led to the statements that you just said there, yeah?
Yeah, we're very much aligned. I think one of the biggest things that Mary brings to Fuel, and I would say even to the Greenville agency industry in general, is she has enormous big brand experience. Her career has been in New York and LA for 20 plus years. She's worked on enormous brands that we would recognize if I said them and that we all grew up with. And I think her being able to bring that exposure to a smaller city like Greenville and to be able to pass that knowledge and experience down to brands that otherwise wouldn't be able to get that. They would have to pay much more for much bigger agencies is like a huge asset for us as well.
I can see that. And, I can also see, though, that if you're coming from big agency with huge clients and huge well-known brands, they are used to entering into a partnership that is we're going to start with the foundation first, right? They're used to going through that and going through steps to strengthen your brand as much as you can. Smaller companies, probably not so much. Is that a difficult thing to sell sometimes to a small guy who may not have the kind of budget that it might require?
Yeah, I think that we're able to meet clients wherever they are. Whatever their budgets are, we can find a plan for them. And again, it's not like we have to take every single client through this enormous, very expensive process. We can We can iterate. I also think just edit the process for them and just make sure that we're all aligned on the answers that we provide to those very core questions. But what I do think as well is very important is for us to be able to sell the importance of investing in brand. Brand is how people choose. It's a shortcut to choice. And you can't really ignore that when you're dealing with a saturated market in basically every industry across the board. There has to be a way that you stand out and are able to connect with your consumer, and it's only through understanding those strategies.
Brittany, good stuff.
Yes, I think so.
Enjoyed the conversation, folks. That is Brittany Sinde, and she is the Associate Creative Director at Fuel, full-service marketing agency, headquartered right here in Greenville, and she is back from Dubai, and we're glad to have her back. And folks, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick 60-second break, and we'll be back with our next guest.
I bet you want a website that drums up business. You see, every business wants to have an effective online presence that helps their business grow. At Drum Creative, we guide you through our process that will drive results by clarifying your message with a beautiful design that's strategically optimized for search. Visit our website at drumcreative.com and let us help you drum up business by designing a website that speaks to your audience and delivers results.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I'm your host, Rick Jenkins. Appreciate you being here, and it's time for our next guest. And our next guest today is Travis Seward. Travis is the Chief of Staff at EVG Media. EVG specializes in content solutions and content licensing and a bunch of other things as well. But they do work globally, but headquartered right here in good old Greenville. Travis, welcome.
Hey there, Rick. Great to be back.
It is good to have you back. Travis has been with us a few times. He pops in from time to time, and so it's always good to have you here. And before we get into business talk for today, let's just talk about EVG a bit. And every time you hear, I always ask, but I just want to make sure that our viewers and our listeners are well aware of who you are and what you do.
So EVG Media has a full-service media company. We focus primarily on our content studio, where we create content for major brands and publications. It can be high-end journalism. It can be social posts, as well as blog posts, or even sponsored or paid content on your behalf. And then we also have a licensing department where we represent about 75 different brands with about 150 publications. And with those publications, we handle their awards and accolade licensing. So when they have given somebody earned media where they're talking about them, we go out and sell that asset to the brand to use in their marketing.
Right. And I want to get all into earned media here in a minute. I did not even know that term until you introduced it to me here a while back. I knew what it was, but I didn't understand that term described it. But let's get back to that in a second. Okay. You also have huge, globally known brands. You work with some really big businesses, the biggest of which I think is probably Google. Yes,
yep, absolutely. We do work for Google. We're one of the only companies that produces content outside of Google for Google. We also work with core hotel chains, WICA, the placement agency. We work for several other publications like America's Test Kitchen, Newsweek, USA Today. All of those people are clients of ours.
I think people have heard of those guys.
I think so.
You know, every time we get together and talk, I'm always reminded and surprised when I hear how many contracted writers you all have stretched across the world. I think it's like 600 or 700 folks that you all can get on the phone and call and say, hey, I want you to write some content for me. And the cool thing is they speak all kinds of different languages.
They speak different languages. They speak different trade and industry expertise. If you have a need, there's probably somebody in our content pool that can help you out, and we can create that content for you.
Not only can they write in the language that you need, but as you said, they have that lingo. And sometimes you have to familiarize yourself with the lingo of the industry that you're doing business with, but these folks don't because they live it, they know it.
They live it, yep. That way we can produce stuff really quickly, on point, and accurately.
Right. Let's talk about earned media. But let's start with owned media.
Okay.
Is that what we call it?
Sure.
Owned and earned.
Yep. So owned media is the media that we create. I spent 23 years of my career working for USA Today's 10 Best, creating travel content.
Yes.
We owned that content. And what we chose to promote was created by our staff with our expertise. And nobody paid to play to be included in that. It's
So
journalism.
owned is pretty simple. It's anything that you produce yourself, you own it, of course, right?
Yep.
That's the logic in owned media.
Absolutely.
Earned media, again, like I said a little bit ago, I had never heard earned tied to it. I'm sure there are all kinds of marketers out there saying, "Well, Rick, you're stupid." You know, that of course that's what it means. But I did not know it. I did not know it. But earned media is content that someone else produces about you or for you on your behalf?
Correct. So think traditionally probably a PR role. That was the person within your company that went out and formed these relationships with influencers, handled the word of mouth, the social promotion, and got your story told or picked up by other publications. And excuse me. And today, there are lots of publications that are out there doing independent reviews, using data to find the best solution for a certain problem. And all of that is when they take your product, your expertise, and they promote it and they recognize it, then they promote it in a story, a list, or an award. So you've earned that because it's the opinion of somebody else who's an expert, whether they're an influencer or a major publication.
So would this video and this podcast and this content that is being produced right now, is that earned media for EVG?
So earned media for who you choose to pick as your guest and to highlight what they're doing in our community. Right. That's all earned.
Right. From your perspective, it's owned from my perspective.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's it.
Have I got that right?
You got it.
Okay.
It's not too hard.
Yeah. So tell me the importance. I mean, the more I think about it, earned media is more valuable, I would assume, in many ways than owned media, because it's other folks talking about you that can bring their legitimacy and their brand to you.
Exactly. So when you're doing something great and you're being recognized for that, whether it is a smart home thermostat that you've built and a tech reviewer thinks it's the greatest thing that's come out this year, a new cooktop, a TV, or even like just the most loved workplace that Newsweek promotes. That is allowing you to take advantage of the audience of those brands, and those brands are recognizing you as a leader and a great product, a great source to their audience. So it's something you could never pay for on your own.
Right, of course. And how do you leverage it? Somebody says something, a story comes out, maybe somebody says something in LinkedIn. Of course, you leverage that by just reposting it and sharing it. But just generally speaking, I would think that you want to jump on that real quick, right?
Absolutely. So your social media example, definitely it's your tribe, it's your peers, it's people. You want to promote that. You want to build those legitimate friendships and support each other in the social post. But when you're talking about like an award or an accolade, we just got back from Berlin where we went to the Consumer Electronics Show called IFA. We represented 22 publishers and handed out 170 awards to top leading products in the world. And when we were talking to those brands, whether it was Blue Eddy that did a generator or Samsung who had a great TV or somebody else who had an awesome cooktop, we work with them to say, what is your marketing needs? How do you want to use this to differentiate yourself in the marketplace? Whether it's in your email signatures to say, we've been recognized by these awesome brands on social media, and use the Newsweek logo as a most loved workplace. All of that carries clout and legitimacy, and it also gets eyeballs when you're scrolling through that social media. It could also be on your packaging. So if you have a consumer good and you're in the storeroom on the shelves of a store, when you're going to pick one TV over the other, pick the one with the badge that's been tested by an expert and recommended.
Travis, you're talking about making sure that people are aware of the accolades you might receive, and not be scared to tell people about those. Sometimes we're hesitant to do that. We shouldn't be hesitant about it, right? I mean, you should put those in your email sigs or or whatever. You should toot your own horn.
Absolutely. And, you should be willing to pay a licensing fee to use that brand's logo or quote or review in all of your materials, because it will really differentiate you, whether it's in your email signature, on your social channels, reprinted in advertising, marketing, billboards.
Yeah.
We even had a company wrap their bus in a 10 Best logo to say that they were the best casino outside of Las Vegas.
Right. I love that. And so, one thing that comes to mind, if you are a best place to work or a most loved place, you got to really take advantage of that.
Absolutely. It's really hard in today's market to find quality employees. And with Newsweek's Most Loved Workplace program, those are actual surveys of people who have worked in those offices and for those companies. And so when you're out recruiting, why wouldn't you want to say, I was one of Newsweek's most loved workplaces? It really does hold a lot of clout.
Right. Travis, as always, good stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Great
you being
to see
here.
you.
Folks, that is Travis Seward. He is the Chief of Staff at EVG Media, a content solutions provider, doing business all over the world, but headquartered right here in Greenville, South Carolina. We're going to take a quick break, 60 seconds, that's all, and we'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. And we'll come back with our featured guest, Dave Edwards, the CEO at GSP International Airport.
Thank you, Rick. My name is John Cannell. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Burr and Froman in Greenville, South Carolina. Appreciate Rick bringing me on today to talk a little bit about some of the business legal issues that I commonly see. One of the issues that stands out to me and that I see a lot of employers of all sizes make are identifying and classifying all of their employees as independent contractors. The issues that we commonly see with independent contractors and employers identifying and classifying their employees as independent contractors is that you don't pay any payroll taxes and you don't have to pay workers' compensation issues. The problem arises when these employees are not properly paid, and specifically whether they're not properly paid with overtime benefits. So as you move forward, what I recommend you doing is when you bring on a new employee, look at how you're hiring this individual and whether they should be properly classified as an independent contractor or an employee. And specifically what you need to look at is whether the employee is doing a job for you and as part of the company. So is that individual in fact going and furthering for the benefit of the employer? If, as an example, an independent contractor on the flip side is someone that's really focused on doing something that is not related to the business. An example is bringing a plumber in to fix either some of your utilities. So of course, if you're not in the business of plumbing, you need to focus on, that can be an independent contractor. However, most individuals that you do retain, I do recommend that you bring them on as employees and that you properly provide them with offer letters at the beginning. And of course, we can always help on providing the certain specifications that you may need.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I am your host, Rick Jenkins, and now it is time for our featured guest. And that featured guest, I have talked to him a time or two before on these kinds of things, and I've known him for quite some time. Talking a really knowledgeable guy here, Dave Edwards. Dave is the president and CEO at the Greenville Spartanburg Airport District. Basically, he is the big boss at GSP International Airport. Dave, welcome.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be here.
It is good to have you here. I haven't talked to you in a while. I mean, it's been several months or so. You've been doing okay?
Been doing great. Things are busy, both at work and at home. So I think things are moving fast.
That's right. They're always busy at the airport, and I want to get into all of that in a second. But I want to start with you for a minute before we get into business stuff. I have said this to you before, and we talked about this in a prior interview I did with you some time ago. You knew what you wanted to do from an early age. You got a degree in airport what?
Aviation management.
Aviation management. I had it there. Aviation management. You did that right from the beginning. How did you know you wanted to do what you're doing?
Well, a little bit of it was I grew up around aviation, private aviation. My father was a pilot, flew for fun. So I spent some time around it for a while. Wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do when I got older, but I went off and did a little 2-week seminar at a institution called Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And when I came back from that 2 weeks, I was 17 years old, and I came back and I said, this is what I'm going to do. Now, originally I was going to fly. I wanted to become a commercial airline pilot.
Right. Did you ever get your license?
I do have a private pilot, multi-engine rated, but never flew commercially.
Okay.
I got into the industry, or I should say, when I was going to school back in 1979, 1980. The bottom fell out on the airline industry after the deregulation of the industry, and pilots with 10 and 15 and 20,000 hours of time were getting furloughed. And I said to myself, do I really want to graduate here in a couple of years and not probably be able to get a job, or do I want to do something different? And that's when I switched to aviation management.
Right. Do you fly, though?
I haven't flown as pilot in command in quite some time. It's been probably 20 plus years since I've done that. Well, pilots
have to go back and
pilot's kind of like a Marine. You know, once a Marine, always a Marine. And when it comes to having a pilot's license, you never lose your license technically,
right?
But you have to become current. So I'd have to go back and get a new medical, do a little currency training, and then I'd get back in the cockpit. Yeah.
All right. Well, one day when you retire, might you do something like that or no?
Well, my girls, I have two girls. One lives in Alexandria, Virginia, the other down in Gainesville, Florida. They are trying to encourage me to get current again and buy a little share in an airplane so I can come visit more often.
Oh, of course.
Those grandbabies, you got to be there for the grandbabies.
So. That's right. That's right. Okay, good stuff. All right, well, Dave, thanks for sharing, but let's talk business now.
Sure.
It wasn't too long ago that the airport got some really good news. I mean, actually, how long has it been? It's 2022 when you won the awards.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that? When did that occur?
Well, it was 2020. We won in 2022.
Okay.
Right? And we had previously won in 2020.
Okay. All right. So what we're talking about, folks, is every year the Airport Council International, ACI, hands out Airport Service Quality Awards. And Dave and his folks just decided they were going to win everything that there was to win, basically, because this is what they win here. Let me read through it. It's a lot of stuff. You were named the world's best airport, basically, small airport.
In our class, that's correct.
In the class, right, as judged by your customers. Best airport in North America, again, for the size. Airport with the most dedicated staff. Easiest airport journey, which I love. Cleanest airport, which is no surprise to anyone who goes to GSP. And, of course, the most enjoyable airport in North America for your size. Did anyone else win anything?
Well, they were runners-up.
Okay, right. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. It's a testament to the team. And when I say that, that's not just the airport district team, the employees that I oversee directly. It really is the entire airport team, which includes our airline tenants, our rental car tenants, our food and beverage and retail operators, air traffic control and the like, because we can't do this all on our own. We have to have all of those other entities to ensure the success occurs that we want to have. And I'm just thankful that we're all pulling in the same direction and want to deliver the best-in-class customer service.
Right. Well, congratulations on it again. Huge honor, to win all of those awards. How many awards, if you could have won them all, how many would that have been?
I think there would have been only a couple of others that were not on the list, and I don't recall what those are.
Because they're not important.
Yeah, they weren't as important as the ones that we got.
That's right. Okay, let's move on. You got a few capital development projects in the works. Actually, you got several. Let's hear about it. Tell me.
Yeah, so a few things that we have going on. Right now, probably the biggest one and that's most visible to folks is a project called TRIP, which is our roadway improvement project. Mm-hmm. And it will be changing the entire front curb of the airport. One will be extending the front curb to create a little bit more length in the curb, but we'll be going from what now is a 3 lanes on the inside and 3 lanes on the outside to 4 lanes on the inside and 2 lanes on the outside. So we'll be completely tearing out the center median strip that's there and really rebuilding that all the way across. In addition, we will take out all of the curb, the actual curb level there, and we'll have what we call a seamless or a flat curb. So folks won't have to worry about stepping over a curb with their bags or any of that right at the curb front. And in addition to that, we're putting in 2 new roundabouts, one on the entrance side and one on the exit side. And we'll also have, we've already put in a slip lane that as you come into the airport, you'll actually, instead of, when you want to come to the curb in the future, instead of coming straight through as you do now off of Aviation Parkway, once you hit that stop sign and you drive through and you'll come up beside the B garage, that's what happens today, you'll actually take a right on this slip road and you'll go down past the B garage, and then the new road into the airport will be to the left. and that will give you an opportunity to take advantage of that extended curb front that we're going to build for drop-off and pickup.
Let me make sure I got this right. So right now you got 3 lanes and 3 lanes, inside and out, right? So you're not going to widen. Well, it'd be hard to widen because you've got the parking garage there. So you're not going to widen. You're just going to go 4 and 2 instead of 3 and 3. And what does that accomplish?
What it helps us on the inside in particular is private vehicle access will be on those 4 inside lanes. We'll have 2 loading and unloading lanes. And then we'll have what we'll call a maneuvering lane to allow people to get in and out easily. And then the last lane on the outside of those 4 will be a through lane. And then we will move all of our commercial traffic onto the 2 outboard lanes. One will be a loading, unloading, and the other will be a through lane.
I got you. All right, so that takes care of that. But now let's go back to the circles. Where is that going to occur?
So as you come inbound on Aviation Parkway,
coming off the interstate,
you'll hit the main roundabout, the new one that we just put in a few years ago. You'll come past that all the way to GSP Drive.
Yes.
So it's where you stop now before you cross over to go into the terminal. There'll be a roundabout there. And then on the exit side, there'll also be a roundabout put in place as well, basically on the next lane over, but that's exiting. So we have actually 2 exit locations today. You can drive all the way to the end of the curb and exit, or you can drive about 3/4 of the way down the curb and exit right in front of the A garage.
Got it. So as you're approaching, the B's on the right?
That's correct.
And the A's on the left. Yes. So as you're approaching it, there's going to be a circle before the B, and as you're coming out, a circle after the A.
All right.
I got it?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And when might this occur?
Project's underway now and should be completed by the end of 2025, or I'll say for sure, or say early 25. Take that back. So we should be pretty well wrapped up by the end of 2024, early 25.
I would guess, though, that's a lot of headaches for the next year and a half, though. People coming, are you going to route them around in some fashion?
We are. The maintenance of traffic is a big issue with these projects. It's one of the reasons, we had some complaints over this. We closed Stevens Road, which used to connect Brockman McClyman from the east side into GSP Drive, and we closed that road in particular for this project and taking us out in the future because we were having a lot of through traffic that was not destined for the airport, just utilizing the airport as a conduit to get over to State Road 14. And there's no way we could have handled that traffic coming through the airport with this project because we're shutting down lanes and opening lanes down to single lanes at times. So it is it's one of those projects that's pretty invasive. Fortunately, to date, our passengers, our customers have been extremely gracious in being willing to accommodate some of the disruption that's going on right now.
Well, I'm sure you got a whole lot of other things going on as well as we look into the future. You've got a 20-year plan, right? What might we see as we look down the road?
Well, there's lots of stuff on that horizon. Another project that we are getting started at the first of the year. It is started now. Hopefully we'll go into construction at the first of the year, is a new parking garage C and a consolidated rental car facility. So that'll be about a 1,500 space facility in total, 750 dedicated spaces dedicated to public parking, 750 dedicated to rental car.
Let me make sure I got it, Dave. I'm sorry. So right now it's in A.
That's
and
correct.
It's going to move out of A, and then that will just be complete parking.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And, that's projects, once we go into construction, is about a 2-year project, so we'll finish that up sometime in probably early to mid 2026. Some of the other major projects that we see coming down the pike, we have terminal expansion over that 20-year period. Additional 5 to 6 gates on Concourse B, a second bag claim on the north side, so similar to what we have down on the south side today. We'll put another one of those bag claims on the north side. We have some office expansion, frankly, for the district as well, because we're running out of space based on our own growth. We have a lot of utility work to do over that period of time. Aging infrastructure at the airport. Airport was built in 1962, so water lines and things like that are coming around for replacement. So we're going to be working on some of that core infrastructure. In 2025-ish, we have a runway rehabilitation project to go out there on our single runway and completely mill up the current asphalt pavement and repave that. That's about a $25 million project in and of itself. So when you look out in the future, new cargo facilities and warehouses and new facilities for our own staff, our maintenance staff, going forward. So it doesn't seem to end, Rick. I mean, it's which is a great problem to have. It's, as I always talk about the airport, and when we talk about growth and demand and needs, well, we're just a reflection of the upstate and what's happening in the upstate. And when you look at the upstate's projections for population growth being 40-ish% by 2040 over the next 17 years, with another 250 to 300,000 people added to our population base just in Greenville County, and that doesn't even take into account, Spartanburg County and Anderson, because we have a 10-county service area. We consider, that we actually provide air service to the 10-county upstate, and as a result, I think we just need to keep up.
Dave, I should have asked you this when we very first started, but how is business now compared to pre-COVID? So COVID hits in March of 2020. There was a while there where we all just said, well, let's just twiddle our thumbs, right? I mean, we don't know what to do. And you all, of course, took a huge hit, and then you started coming back up. But in Q1 of 2020, before COVID hit, what does business today look like compared to then?
We are really back. And that just happened recently. So, when we look back to that 2019, 2020 timeframe, we were going gangbusters at the airport. I think we had about 23 straight months of growth. January and February of 2020, we grew in the high single-digit range, 8 to 9% month over month, year over year. So we were set up for a banner 2020. And of course, as you just alluded to, COVID hit, things tanked. We went to 4% of our traffic volume in April of 2020, and have been climbing out since. In May or June of 2020, we did a forecast to try to project when we thought we might be back to our 2019, 2020 numbers. Ironically, we said that year was going to be 2024. And we're hitting it already. I'm going to say we're hitting it in our fiscal year 2024, which started July 1st here of 2023. So we're not comparing anymore to 2019 because we're saying we're back. So now going forward, we're looking ahead, and just know that we're on a continued growth trend. Airline seat capacity is back for us. Not again quite to that 2019 level, but we're seeing even higher load factors on those flights. And as we move into the rest of the fall, we see increased seat capacity continuing to come, which bodes very well for us.
Lately, COVID has been rearing its head again just a little bit. Has there been any change in masking requirements, or do you foresee any?
There has been no change to date. I do not see a federal mandate coming for that. I do see some folks taking some precautions already and donning some masks when they're traveling through the airport.
But that's a personal decision.
That's an individual
right?
decision. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so nothing's coming from your office.
Not that we're aware of. No.
Okay. Good. Wasn't too long ago that you added another a discount airline service, Avello Airlines. Is that correct? And they're going nonstop to Orlando down to Disney World, and
they're doing
correct.
Well.
How's that doing?
They're doing well. An unknown brand, obviously, for the region here. Nobody really knew much about Avello. I'm not going to say we knew a whole lot about Avello, aside from them starting up a few years ago. I would say early out of the gate, it's interesting. Every time we start something new out of the airport, and it really doesn't matter whether it's air service, it could be the MAG Escape Lounge, our VIP lounge.
Right.
We take usually 60 to 90 days for it to spool up and for people to catch on. And that's really what happened with Avello. So they started back in June. We've really seen some momentum pick up with them over the last 60 days or so. They fly, as you mentioned, to Orlando. They fly to Tweed New Haven Airport up in Connecticut, and they're also flying to Wilmington, Delaware. And believe it or not, the best route out of those three that I just mentioned is the Tweed New Haven route up to Connecticut. And I think it gives people that might be trying to get into that Northeast Corridor area that don't necessarily need to go into New York. They can overfly that on Avello and get up into Connecticut and get to places they need to go.
So when you say it's the best one, does that mean it is the most, I'm sorry for not understanding the lingo, is the most occupied?
I would say yes. I would say overall it has performed the best, both in ridership.
Yeah, ridership, there you go.
And from a fare perspective for them.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I would have just assumed it would have been Orlando for obvious reasons. You taught me. Okay, let's talk about air cargo service. you recently received a grant. I'm looking here to make sure I got it right. $5.2 million to support infrastructure improvements. And you've got some matching funds there. I think altogether we're talking about $8.5 million. Number one, where did it come from? And number two, what's it going to be used for?
Sure. Well, it's actually a project we're almost finished with, believe it or not. So this was an expansion of our cargo apron that we built back in 2019. So we had invested about, at that time, $31 million in a cargo apron and a cargo building in order to help facilitate the growth of air cargo, in particular international air cargo, in and out of GSP. We grew so rapidly during COVID that we just were running out of space. So we needed to get another project in play that would allow us to handle more aircraft, which meant an expansion of that cargo apron. So we designed that. It's basically a doubling of the size. So the original cargo apron could handle 3 747-800 aircraft. And this will add another 3 positions on the other side to accommodate that size aircraft again. And it's, as I mentioned, just about wrapping up. We did seek some federal dollars and assistance for that. So the $5.3 million grant you mentioned is from the EDA, Economic Development Agency, and the ACOG here, the Appalachian Council of Governments, helped us secure that grant and are helping us with the management of that as well through the process. The interesting thing was, you mentioned that $8.5 million. That was the original cost estimate for the project, which was estimated prior to COVID. When we actually pulled the trigger on construction, it ended up being a $16 million project. And so double what we originally estimated. And so we did receive the $5.3 million in grant funding and are getting that money reimbursed as we have our expenditures. And then we needed to go self-fund the balance in order to bring that project to fruition. So that's what we need to do.
So we're talking, you need an extra $10, $11 million.
Right.
And how's that coming?
It's gone fine. I mean, we've got it. We did count on some other federal grant money from what we call the Airport Improvement Program, which comes out of the Federal Aviation Administration. And it looks like those dollars are going to come through. That's going to be about another $4.3 million. So we'll end up with having about half of the dollars that we needed to fund the project come through grants, and the other half is going to come from our cash resources.
Okay. Let's talk, I never stopped to think until I had conversations with you about this over the years. I never stopped to think about the economic development impact that an airport has on the communities that it serves. Of course, it's logical and it makes perfect sense, but I suppose I just never really stopped to think about it. Give us an idea of what that economic impact is from GSP.
Sure, and I'm going to take us back in a little bit of time.
Okay.
We'll do a quick time warp here,
right,
because I think it can give listeners and viewers the perspective of what growth at the airport means for economic impact in our community. So when I arrived at GSP in 2009, we were at about 600,000 or 700,000 enplanements, boardings, total passengers of around 1.2, 1.3 million. Our economic impact at that time was estimated at about $377 million. Fast forward that to 2012, we redid our economic impact study. Southwest Airlines had come in 2011. We had grown significantly. We were up around 1.8 million total passengers in round numbers. Our economic impact grew to 817 million. So more than double.
Yep.
Right, during that time.
Yep. And that was from what year to what year?
2009 to 2012.
Got it. All right.
So then we redid the economic impact study again in 2018. Our passenger levels at that point had grown to about 2.5 million from that 1.8 million. In addition, we had started to build some of the cargo business. We had also started to do some land development on the airport for some projects. And the estimated economic impact grew to 2.9 billion. So more than a tripling of economic impact between 2012 and 2018. Ironically, I have engaged that same consultant to come back and update our economic impact study again. That process we are in process of that right now. And I'm really excited to see what the results will be. While we haven't necessarily had the passenger growth from the last economic impact study in 2018, and now that we had in previous studies that we had done We've seen other things develop in a significant way, like cargo and some other land development. So I truly believe we'll probably be definitely north of $3 billion, but I think we'll be north of $3.5, maybe even $4 billion in annual economic impact when this study is completed.
Do you have an idea of what the contribution from the cargo business is?
Yeah, in the last study, it was about 500 million of that initially.
Okay, so we're talking, what percent is that? 500 million out of how many billion did you say?
Out of 2.9. So
okay,
it's
right.
about 20%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's significant.
Yeah. Well, and again, it will be even much larger this time around. It will, because we just have a much bigger footprint in cargo today versus what we had back then. Again, example would be, I think we were ranked 70th or so in the country in North America in cargo volumes, and I'll say values because that's how they measure it, in product being moved. And now we're up around 22nd in North America. So we've moved significantly up the chain of cargo airports in North America.
For sure. Well, for an organization that provides that much economic impact, I would think that there would be other organizations will be tripping over themselves to give you money to help defray cost and expense. But I have a feeling that's not necessarily the case. It's got to take a lot of money to run an airport and to do all of the things that we've been talking about now. Where does that money come from?
Well, typically, so let me break it into two different places. So from an operating and maintenance standpoint, the things we do every day, the salaries we pay to our staff, and just the ongoing upkeep on the airport, we have to generate all of those revenues from the users of the airport. So, that comes in parking rates. People park, they pay. When you rent a car, the rental car companies for operating on the airport pay the airport a fee. The airlines lease space, we get fees for that, landing fees, et cetera. And so we have to be fully self-sufficient and generate those revenues from the operations on the airport for operating and maintenance expenses. On the capital side, it's slightly different. We do have the ability to secure some federal grants. We talked a little bit about the EDA grant. That's unusual. That's not there all the time. But we do have the Airport Improvement Program that falls under the Federal Aviation Administration. And on an annual basis, we'll get $4.5 million a year in what they call entitlement money. And then in addition to that, we have a passenger facility charge program that's overseen by the federal government, but it's considered local dollars. They're not grant dollars. And that's when you buy a ticket or I buy a ticket on an airplane, you pay this passenger facility charge. That's $4.50. I'm going to keep it simple and just say it's that for now. And we get a piece of that back. Airlines keep a little piece for actually the administration cost of collecting the money and remitting it to the airport. But that, again, equates to another $4.5 million a year for us. So just say that in round numbers is $10 million that we have available. The rest of the dollars, and on average, over the time that I've been at GSP and with the district, we expend about $40 to $60 million a year in capital investment. So if you just say, let's take a round number of $50 million, and at $50 million, if we're getting $10 million through the Airport Improvement Program and $10 million, or $5 million from the Airport Improvement Program and $5 million from the PFCs we collect, total of $10 million, that's 20% of our need. So we have to still fund 80% of the rest of what we're doing from a capital standpoint. And we have gone out to the state. We've had several meetings with our legislative delegation and with the State Aeronautics Commission and said, look, and this was started a couple of years ago, and initially we said, we are the only mode of transportation in the state of South Carolina that receives no state support.
The only mode of transportation, so we're talking rail, right? Everything coming out of the Charleston port and harbor.
Right, and roads.
And roads.
And bridges, obviously, along with that.
Right.
And we thought, for the reasons that, we've talked about when you look at the economic impact of the airports, and I'll take that for a minute on a broader basis for the state. So in 2018, when I mentioned we did our economic impact study that showed that GSP had a contribution of $2.9 billion, State Aeronautics Commission did an economic impact study at the same time, and it said that the commercial service airports, which are 6 airports in the state, had an economic impact of almost $16 billion a year. And tax revenue generation to the state, local and state taxes of almost $700 million a year. And so, our collective feeling was, look, we need the state to help us with these very expensive infrastructure projects and reinvest some of those tax dollars that currently are coming from this sector and put them back into infrastructure. And so we started to work on that, had a lot of great discussions. 2 years ago, we were very successful and receiving a one-time non-recurring piece of funding, $50 million, which was split amongst the 6 commercial service airports. Out of that, GSP got about $8.9 or $9 million, which was great. This last year, we were chasing another $50 million, and unfortunately, right at the end, due to some of the budget discussions, that got cut from $50 million down to $20 million. So now we're dividing $20 million. And the reality is, for GSP, and I won't speak for all of the other airports, we believe that we really need the state to fund us at about $10 or $15 million a year in order to really deliver on the capital projects that need to be done at GSP that will allow us to grow the airport, to meet the needs of the upstate moving forward on the commercial service side, both from a passenger and a cargo perspective. And with that, the state's going to continue to benefit from that increased economic impact and tax revenue. And, so when we look at it, you could say even if we could get 10% of the tax revenue, that would be $70 million a year for commercial service airports. And that would probably be pretty close to covering the needs, somewhere between $70 and $100 million a year in order to fund those major capital projects at airports around the state. Charleston, I don't have their full capital plan, but they have a major terminal expansion need down there. And they're talking about, the need to spend $500 or $600 million themselves on their improvements. So lots of needs out there, never enough money. And some of the things that have even made it tougher is not, as I mentioned with the cargo apron expansion project, we just see increased cost of construction on an ongoing basis. So nothing's getting cheaper. And you see that on one side, and then you couple that with the fact that borrowing rates, if you have to go borrow money, have doubled almost. The ability to do some of these projects with that without additional support from a grant perspective, really from both the state and the federal government, is going to be extremely difficult for airports to achieve.
Is this funding, I'm not going to say lack of funding because you do receive funding from the state, but is this, I'll say minimized funding, is that in some way unique to South Carolina or no?
Well, I would say, 2 years ago when we weren't receiving any dollars, we were the only one of, I think in the Southeast, Rick, we might have been the only state, with the exception of Georgia, in the Southeast that did not receive state aviation funding dollars. Florida has a tremendous program. It's $300 million a year plus. They've had that for years. In the last few years, I'd say the last 5 years, North Carolina put in place a program that funds their commercial airports at $75 million. They're going to $125 million. In addition to that, out of ARPA, they received, I think it was about $140 million in some ARPA funding support, which we didn't receive here in South Carolina. Tennessee is now at $85 million for, I think, 5 commercial service airports in Tennessee. So we're seeing our surrounding airports or surrounding states putting programs together that are very significant. And ultimately, with some of that, as with anything, because air service is such a critical component for new business recruitment and retention, right? For businesses to come to locate in places as well as to stay. If we don't stay competitive with our surrounding states, we have the potential to continue to lose new business recruitment here in the state of South Carolina.
So it sounds like, yes, this is somewhat unique to South Carolina in that regard. I would assume you've had many conversations about this at the State House. And what is the response?
Yeah, I think overall we've gotten a good response. I think, in fairness to the legislators, in fairness to those in the State House, the governor and the lieutenant governor, there's lots of budget needs. Yeah. And you have to balance things at the end of the day. But when you look at the return on the investment of $1 in grant funds to what that returns in economic impact, it's huge. There was a study that was done by the Council on Competitiveness, which is a group under the Department of Commerce, and that report showed that for every dollar invested, there's a $3,000 return on that investment. I mean, those are just huge dollars at the end of the day. So I don't think there's a better place that folks could decide to invest money, at least if you're looking at the pure return on those dollars. And we're going to continue to work with our legislators and work with the State House in trying to really put in place recurring funding. It's great to get some dollars, right, but you don't want to have to necessarily go fight for those every year.
You need to know what's coming.
You need to be able to plan.
You got a budget, right?
Well, you just heard. When we talked about, we have a 20-year plan.
Yes.
It's $1 billion over 20 years,
right,
that we have to invest in order to keep pace. And we need to have an idea of how we're going to fund this.
Dave, good stuff as always.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, man.
Thanks so much.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Folks, that is Dave Edwards. He is the CEO and the president at the Greenville Spartanburg GSP International Airport, the Greenville Spartanburg Airport District. And appreciate him joining us. And thank you for joining us on another episode of Let's Talk Business. We will be back again, and so we'll see you the next time. Thanks.